Welcome to episode 13 of The Accursed. This is a story you're going to want to listen to from the beginning. If you're just jumping in now, I suggest going back to episode 1 and starting there. This podcast shares some scares and frights. It may also delve into adult themes. Specific content warnings are in the show notes of each episode. Please check there so that you can honor yourself and your needs. We have a lot to talk about this week, and I want to start with last week, actually. So I listened back to the last episode, and I think I was still sort of in shock when I recorded it. I sounded way too relaxed about the fact that I was scratched on the neck by something I couldn't or didn't see. I don't think I was in a place to really convey how terrifying that experience was for me. I was really focused on trying to tell my story and not be called crazy, and so I sort of glossed over the headline. But the truth is, I was scared. I still am. Very much so. In a way that I haven't been since I was a whole lot younger. For all that I have experienced in my life, nothing had ever physically harmed me. I've had the sensation of being touched before, but nothing like being scratched. And like I said in the last episode, I do have boundaries in place, or I thought I did. These boundaries, both the ones of my own intention and ones created using ritual, they've worked for me for a long time now. There's something I engage with regularly, and I do not take them for granted. Now, I am not really sure what I'm supposed to do. I've been energetically clearing my space and reinforcing those aforementioned boundaries. But something just feels different. Usually when I do all of that, I feel better, safer. But lately, not so much. There's just something that feels off. And not all the time, thank goodness, but some of the time, enough of the time. One of the first people I ever talked to about my paranormal experiences, one of the first people I worked with to start to try and understand what was going on, they told me that when I felt scared, when I felt like something was off, I should trust that I should clear the space. And I'm trying to remember that because that's all I can do right now. And so, like I said, I'm doing it. But sometimes, no matter what I do, I still feel afraid. And I really don't like that. I'm kind of holding on to the hope that I'm being paranoid or just overthinking. This is not how I want to live, in fear. But other than tending to my physical space, I don't know what else to do. Except, I guess, double down on trying to figure out what is happening here and why. Including, and probably especially, who's leaving these letters. Because that seems like something I might just have control over. I do have a story for you, of course, and what a doozy a story this is. But I actually want to start today by telling you a little bit about some of the people in my neighborhood who might be leaving the stories. And maybe you'll see something that I'm not. So back in episode 1 or 2, I mentioned that I have security cameras outside of my house, and that I have been able to catch a glimpse of who seems to be leaving these letters, these stories for me in my little library. I haven't gotten a clear view of their face, but what I can tell you is that they appear to be female-bodied. They often have a long coat on, and their hair is pulled up, sometimes under a hat, sometimes in a ponytail. They look to be about 5'7", thin, lithe frame. And I can't really get a sense of age, but they don't seem to be too elderly. In my little neighborhood, there are 4 people that I know of at least that match that description for the most part. I've obviously changed their names and some other details because I really don't want to invade their privacy, especially if they didn't have anything to do with this. And I need to figure something out over here. So today I am going to tell you about 2 of these people. And next episode, I'll tell you about the other 2. And if you get a hunch or, like I said, see something that I am not, please let me know. So the first up is Mandy. I actually told Mandy about these stories when they first began arriving. She happened to see me reading one of the early ones, sitting on my porch, and she stopped to talk. It didn't occur to me to keep it a secret at that point. Also, she is a librarian, and they're absolutely the smartest people I know. I thought she might be able to help me see if the stories were taken from, I don't know, some obscure text that was not easily searched on the internet. Mandy lives with her husband and 2 kids. I think the oldest of the kids is in kindergarten, and the other one's definitely a toddler. I don't know her well, but she's always been kind to me. She'll often stop and chat and helps to keep our little library stocked. I definitely think she is smart enough to pull this off, but having a full-time job, 2 kids, a spouse, and a weird writing project that she gets no credit for, that seems like a lot. Even if she's leaving somebody else's stories, she'd be doing it late at night, which seems exhausting for someone who always looks exhausted. Next up is Liz. I think she's 17 now, or at least is about to be. She seems like a sweet kid, and she's a teenager, so it's not like she's spending hours talking to her adult neighbor. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but next to my little library, I have a whiteboard. I put icebreaker type questions on it, like what's your dream vacation, or what's your favorite song to dance to? And the people in my neighborhood write their answers on it. I put it up a few months after Helene as a way to stay connected. And I kind of love how everyone just plays along. I've obviously never seen handwriting on the board that looked anything like Hazel's, or whoever is writing out those letters. But I have seen Liz's handwriting. There have been a few times I've been outside at the right time when she's been writing on the board. Her handwriting is nothing like Hazel's. It's a whole lot more like mine. A mess. I've only had one real conversation with Liz. I'd gotten home right as she was checking out the library, and it looked like she'd been crying. I asked if she was okay and invited her to sit down on the porch with me. She mostly just complained about her father's girlfriend, who just moved in, and how she didn't like how the girlfriend was trying to be her mother and force a relationship. She didn't talk about her mother, and I didn't pry. I should say, Liz lives with her father, the father's girlfriend, and a younger brother who I think is 8 or 10. I don't know much about them. They seem relatively normal from what I can tell. And that is what I know about my first 2 neighbors. And next episode, I'll tell you about 2 more. Before we get to today's story, someone had emailed me a question, and I thought it should be answered here. They asked how I could tell if a letter was authentic. I mean, someone who listens could drop off a story of their own. How would I know the difference? Well, FYI, that has never happened, but I would not be opposed to it. There are two ways I could tell, at least, if a letter's real. One is Hazel's handwriting. It is fairly distinctive. And I haven't shown it on social media before on purpose. If someone was to leave a letter, they would have to match that handwriting and match that handwriting over several pages, which I don't imagine would be an easy task. The second way is that there's a small design that has been stamped on the inside of each and every envelope I've received. It's unique looking and fairly intricate. I have told very few people of its existence and what it looks like. For now, I'm gonna keep it that way, at least until this mystery is solved. So, thank you for your question, and as always, if anyone out there has more questions, more thoughts about what's going on, send me that email, JoAnna@theaccursed.com. And now, finally, let's get into the story. For the past few weeks, it has seemed like the stories that I've received have almost been in response to the podcast, to whatever story I'd been reading the week before or whatever questions I'd been asking. And the story that I have for you today that arrived this week feels the same, but maybe in a bigger way, or what it shares is bigger, more of a peek into the shadows, into the woods. It, of course, has left me with more questions than answers, but still, maybe it's not trying to answer one question, but many. Oh, and to be clear, this letter actually arrived the night before episode 12 was released. It was already recorded and ready to go. I didn't change a thing. But in episode 11, I'd said, who knows what's in those woods? Certainly not me, though I sure would like to. I talked about the connection between the homestead and the woods, saying that I know it matters, even if I'm not sure why yet. And I wonder if maybe the story I'm about to read, the one that was left for us, is some sort of answer to my wonderings. When Arthur passed, a chasm opened under my feet and tried to swallow me up. The pain grabbed at my heart, jagged edges ripping away at whatever softness I had left. I know it may seem awfully hypocritical to you now, but he left me with the ache of a broken promise, and bitterness was licking at my heels like fire. I remember Mama setting me in the back seat of Arthur's old sedan. She sat up front with the man from the funeral home, touching his arm, laughing as he said nothing funny at all. They took me to the homestead. There was nowhere else to go. Pops was having trouble walking by then. Mama was there, running away from something or other. But Pops needed help, and I suppose she'd been trying. I stayed in the front room, Mama already having taken back what she thought was hers. And Agnes had faded mostly by that time, her shimmer there only for the wind. Just a bit, just enough. I drew the curtains tight and buried myself in the world between sleep and waking, thinking I'd just stay there forever. Mama gave me 3 days. I suppose it was as much as she could take. On the 4th day, Mama ripped the blankets clean off the bed, like a bandage off a still bleeding wound. She hollered that this was not the way a life should be lived and pulled me to my feet. Her voice went on and on about how she knew what I knew, that she was a widow too. and that there was a whole wide world waiting for us out there. It might have seemed romantic to virgin ears, but I knew she was just talking herself into leaving now that I'd come back. I sat at the kitchen table with Pop as she flitted around the kitchen, making us breakfast. He put his hand on mine and told me that I was welcome to stay as long as was needed, that this was my home, now and forevermore. Mama didn't like hearing that one bit and dropped the plate of bacon down so hard it almost skittered right off the table. Spring had shown up early that year. Mama shooed me outside, saying the fresh air would do me good. It had been some time since I'd been there. Home. Been some time since I looked out into the woods. I sat on the front steps and just watched the trees shimmer ever so slightly. And when the wind sang, I was sure I heard his laugh. It had been a time since I'd heard that, too. I figured it was just a trick of the shadows, a trick of my grief. But it lingered, the laughing, ebbing with the breeze, a hum rising up behind it, low but still, somehow tugging at my seams, threatening to unravel me from the roots unless I gave up, gave in. I don't remember standing or even walking. I only remember running my hand over the top of the old stone fence, feeling the rough surface for the first time in more years than I cared to remember. I wanted nothing more than to lay down upon it, chest pressed to the cold rock, and lose myself in the cracks. Pop's voice grabbed at me, trying to wake me from whatever dream I'd found myself in. "Hazel, that's enough now. Come on in. Get away from there." I looked at him, unsure of how I was, where I was. He was trying to make his way down the steps, but even then, I could see the world was not there to hold him much longer. A crow cawed, speaking its truth. I shook myself loose of whatever all that was and ran up to meet him, holding his arm as we made our way back inside. If I told you it was a dream, would it be easier to believe? A howl was what first broke through the dark. It swirled in the air, becoming a fire I could hold right in the palm of my hand. The window that never once did open when I was awake was cracked just a bit, enough for me to raise it high. And I climbed out, not caring that I was only in my nightgown. Thankfully, it was flannel and warm against the cold night. The moon made the shadows come alive. The trees reached for me as if they were promising to mend the sorrows that bore down on my soul. I remember feeling the tears as real as they could be. I was surprised to find that they were mine. Alone. I once again found myself standing right in front of the old stone fence. A sliver of moonlight shone through the clouds and fell right where I'd rested my hand hours earlier. But now, wherever I was, there was nothing there, only a gap in the wall, wide enough for me to walk right through. There was no hesitation, even though I knew better. I walked, barefoot, into the woods. The trees thinned, only few steps in. A path forged not by my feet. All I could do was follow. It was cold, I knew that, but I felt nothing of the sort. Vines slithered along the ground, reaching out to stop me, but I had no way of knowing then that I should have let them. I walked until there was nothing left but the night, and in that dark I heard his laugh again. The wind kicked up, and what I had once placed deep inside of me, under lock and key, broke wide open. And as if he could feel it, as if he knew, he started to speak. My name. Hazel, Hazel, Hazel. The same as it had always been, from times before I could even remember. I felt his breath hot against the back of my neck. I remembered both the fear and delight it had brought me in times other than now. Now, there were no more choices. He promised me eternity. Once freedom, really. If only I walked through the door. He had been waiting. Old and worn, a glimmer of gray, and beside him, a door where no door should be. I remember my hand gripping the knob, the sting of it, strange and cold against my skin. It was a step and nothing more, a way in that would offer me a way out. Isn't that what I deserved? Isn't it? I woke with a start just before the sun was to push over the horizon, and it took me a spell to realize that I was laying on the old stone fence, my arms tucked underneath my head like a pillow. I gathered myself quickly and walked back to my room, hoping Mama was still asleep. I needed time before I had to meet her eyes. Months later, when I began to show, everyone said it was a blessing to get to carry Arthur's memory. It was easier just to agree. The story is not quite done. You may remember a few episodes back, one of the stories had a coda at the end. There was a flourish and a few more words. So this one does too. This is what is after the flourish. It is not mine to know if he spoke a truth or a lie. That is for you. And for that, I am sorry. So as I am sure you can imagine, I've got questions. I don't really know what to make of this story. Is it a dream? Or does she say that literally to make the experience more palatable or understandable? Who did Hazel hear? Who was waiting for her? A shadow? The shadow? And is there one shadow? Are they all connected? Are they all the same? Does the shadow take different shapes and forms? Is he the one who's been whispering Hazel's name? I think a lot about the story in episode 5. The story that Hazel tells where her mother is still pregnant with her. In that story, Hazel writes that she knows what happened to the shadow. when her mother finally set it free. Is this it? Is this what happened? And the breath on the back of her neck. She mentioned that in the very first story in episode 1. Is that the same entity? The same shadow? Is it the same as the one she saw behind her mother's fiancé's eyes? What does this shadow want from her? What is it offering her, really? And who is Hazel talking to in these stories? In this one especially, she is clearly addressing someone. But who? The possibility that she could be addressing me makes me physically ill. I don't think it is happenstance that this particular story arrived after episode 11. There are some answers here, at least to some of my inquiries in that episode. There are, of course, a whole lot more questions, too. But maybe these are the questions we need to be asking. That is what I have for you this week. Like I said, if you have any answers, hunches, questions of your own, I want to hear them. You can email me at JoAnna@theaccursed.com. Until next time, goodbye. The Accursed is written, created, and all around conjured by me, Anna Dane. You can find out more about the show at theaccursed.com or on Instagram at The Accursed Podcast. You can find out more about me at JoAnna Dane. The intro and outro song, Cathedral, is provided by Moby Gratis. Want an extra bonus story? Sign up for our mailing list at theaccursed.com, and one will be delivered right to your inbox. If you like the show, there are 2 ways you can help us out. First, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you happen to listen. Second, share us with other folks in your world who also might love a good ghost story. Thank you again for listening. Bye.